1, 2, 3. Hey. Okay, I think we have everything up and running. Let's make sure this one is available. This one is here. It's great. Right, I want to do one more thing before start. Okay, I think this one is done. Yes, we can close it. Yes, looks good. Oh, hello. Okay, so plan for today is to create. Okay, so I posted a video on YouTube about the way how you would sort of like use MySQL as how you would optimize the MySQL ETLs, and I was talking about like using the CDCs and things like that, and I decided that I didn't really answer the question, because in some cases to introduce the CDC and other things might be too extreme, and you actually just want to optimize your MySQL for both ETLs or not ETLs. So I decided that I kind of like would want to talk a little bit more about the indices and show how the indices works for those who doesn't know. And I think I personally would like to go deeper a little bit into the explain plan and sort of like show like a different ways how you can optimize your queries and later optimize your ETLs if that would go to it. And to do any of that, I need to have a data, right? And I do not really have any sort of like a source data which I could rely and use. So my idea is just to run, run this project, create a project generator, right, where I would generate the MySQL, the data, data for the database. And the first step is to actually write a generator which would generate different sort of like types of data, and you would say like, okay, this is my model. I don't know how yet I will go to it. Like, should I use Pydantic for that? Should I use some other approaches? I think we'll figure out as we go. I mean, it's still an interesting project to have. And yeah, so I guess a lot of coding, a lot of sort of like preparation before I actually can get to the position where I would want to run this, where I want to do sort of like a analysis. And yeah, so sit back, enjoy if you enjoy coding, and yeah, we'll get there. So more Python. Some people likes that, some people don't. Right, as always, we need to figure out a project name, and I do not really know. So just generator alligator, right? I think that's a good name. So the alligator will be our generator. And now what we want to do, okay, we basically go Python -man alligator, and then would need to do something like here. So we start as always with a Python file called manage.py, and this Python manage file will have a main which will say from alligator app. The app doesn't exist there, and well, it's following the word app, but I don't know if the app is here. And would you basically like app equal, I think we can just go with that. Will we be passing any parameters I would want us to pass? We'll get there, right? So, okay, so we have an alligator. Let's create a new Python. So this will be our app, right? Sort of like a main thing. So class app, and it follows this logic. I think I already have a bunch of code created in the different project, right? And I could just use a bunch of there from there. So if I go into ventilator, we can take the environment sample file, which we can put in here, right? So this is our environment. Yes, it's a text file, and then we also want to add environment sample, so we could copy the configurations which we'll be using. That's perfect. Now here we do have an app, a config, so let's grab config, just add it in here. Now that's good. For the app, I think we can take the app in here as well. Oops, I moved it in the wrong place. Let's move it into correct place. Yeah, so we write full app. Then I think I want to take the log, which I have here. That should be good. And now for my manage part, we just loading the environments, we adding this. Yeah, I think that's a good. We can take those in here. And we good. Requirements, we go here. That's great. We can close it. I think we have a bunch of stuff already ready. So first of all, pip install -r, and let's install all the necessary requirements, which I don't know if they're necessary. Well, they're not really necessary because we don't need to use the Discord, right? So pip install -r doesn't remove. So how do you like pip uninstall Discord? How do you actually, I never thought of this, but like, okay, so pip has install, uninstall. So what if I go pip uninstall -r requirements? I see. It would just remove, okay, so if I also would say like, okay, also remove the Discord, which I just, yes. So if I run again this one, it'd say like remove Discord. Okay, so what install, so what do I have now in the pip list? I have a bunch of things which was added because of these other packages. This is really like yeah, Python is not really best about this one. Okay, so let's go this way. So first of all, -rf virtual environment, and now Python 1.12, Python 1, what I'm doing wrong, Python, and let's get out here. All right, 3.112 -m -v. It's good. Discord is removed. We only have what we also don't need OpenAI for this one, right? So pip install -r requirements. Oops, I need to activate environment first. Source .vnv bn activate. Okay, pip install -r requirements. and that's clean and good. Okay, so now the final thing before we're done, we go to the file projects and we introduce a new SDK, which is a Python SDK. And we just do a simple gag where we say like, okay, this is your path, and then just go bin Python, array, and we're done. So now I just need to go install all the necessary things and sort of like, no, I don't want to try PyCharm. Okay, not satisfied, so you just need to refresh and should be good. Okay, so first of all, this is not ventilator, this is alligator, ventilator, alligator, sort of like a Tor. Alligator. Okay, so we have this one, we're disabling these for the time being. We're running our application with the logs and stuff. So in the configuration, this is all good. We don't need any of those, so I don't know yet what we will use. Okay, so first thing is we make the bug equal true. Is this how we write it in the config? Nope. We write it like this. Right, so now additionally what we do is false if true. Is it true? Yes, it's true. You can close everything, and then for the logs we do have everything also import and ready. So if we now go into our app, so of course it's complaining about many things, but this is fine. We have alligator, we don't use any of these. Now we don't use any of these. Init is done, debug is done, memory we don't use, this we don't use. We'll just want to run, and we just want to say that our application is actually up and running. Then we can close, delete everything else, right? So now if I do python -m manage n, okay, the application was running. It's actually was executed and exited because this is not like anything else, right? We just build a simple application which does printing of the string. Actually, we didn't receive this part. I assume it's because of the log level error, right? So this is another thing. So if we go into the log, we have log level here as an environment variable. So we just need to set here equal debug. Would that help? Okay. So if I would run that again, yes, starting in the debug, and I see now the message running great. So this one is done. Okay. Now the next thing which I want to look into is that we want to, what do we want to do, right? So git commit initial commit with running app. Git push. Right, good. I think we should also exclude the data. So we need to actually exclude everything what will be under data / MySQL / everything inside that should be excluded. So if someone will create data file, no, do not add it. It should be excluded. Why it's not? Is it because it's already added and that's the, okay, so now it's excluded. Git status also, ooh. How did I miss this? Okay. Okay, so now if I go into repository, okay, perfect. We don't have anything in here, which is, yes, very good. Perfect. Okay. Where do we start, right? So I think where I want to start with something where I could create an object, a model, then give a certain requirements for this object, for this model, and just to run the code, right? So I think what I want to search, like maybe already someone have created, Pydantic generating sample data set from model definitions. Okay, so someone was already looking about into this. So there is a Faker and Pydantic. Okay, let's figure out what is the Faker. No, not this Faker. So Faker, Pydantic. Okay, so Pydantic factories. No, that's not what I'm looking for. Okay, so it's basically, okay, so I want to find an information about this project. So it should be in the PP, right? Yes. Okay, so Faker is a Python package that generates fake data for you, whatever you need. Bootstrap, great, good looking XML, okay. By these projects, starting from version drop support for Python 2, that's okay. So the Faker, fake name, fake address, fake text. Okay, so providers, add provider. Okay, so extended docs, bundle provider. Oh, that's really cool. I like that. So there is a bunch of providers. And this is the documentation. Okay, so market data. Do we have like e-commerce data or something like that? Because this is what I want to use. So that's the address, bank, barcode, color company. That's great. Currency, yes. File, yes. Internet, ESBN. Lorem password, person, profile. That's great. And now here is documentation. So this is a standard providers. This is a community providers. Okay, so that's great. I mean, let's start with this one. So this is cool. Okay, so we go into here and we just add Faker. We don't go with the Pydantic yet. Let's go slowly, right? Requirements. So now, how does... I mean, I could just create, you know, like a simple application and just don't be bothered about that. But I think, as I said, what I want to do, I mean, I'll get there, right? So let's start with this simple thing. So, okay, so testing. So from Faker, import Faker. That's great. And now, right, so fake dot name, right? So print this Python test py. Interesting. Okay, what else do you have in here? Okay, email, free email, safe, automobile license plate, autonomous community. What's that? Okay, has no attributor, so I don't know what this is. Area code, bank, and stuff like that. Okay, so this is clear. Now, I want to get back in here. Big data from biology, life science domains. Air travel, airport names, airport codes, credit card score, data sets, and the figure data sets. What's that? Data set cities, countries, states, cities, DBs. But why they call it data sets? First, a building block for seeding data generation with the existing data. You can create a simple, provide picking random entries from the total data set and assemble complex ones. Oh, I see. And then it becomes cities as a provider. And then you can say generate mania. Picker city. Can I see the cities example? All right, so this is, yes. So I want to populate the MySQL database with the fake data. So I never did anything like that in the past. Usually all my data is already up and running and available. And by the way, hey, Peach Telingo, haven't seen you in a while. I hope you're going good. Right, so this is basically what I found. There is this project called Faker, and it actually has a bunch of things, right? So I could just go in here and I could just say, you know, like, let me increase the screen a little bit. I could say like fake name, right? And fake address. And I could say, you know, like name lives in this address, right? And now if I would print my code, it basically shows that, you know, like Clayton lives in this one. And that's sort of like the full address, which it has. So, and additionally to all of that, it's sort of like it also has ability to have plugins where you basically add your, you know, like community can add a plugin to all of that. And I was just going over the list and I reached this one and it says like, oh, you know, like there is this Faker data set. So I went this one and it says like, well, you actually can provide a file with a data, like for example, countries or cities, and then you just register that as a file and it would use this to sort of like generate stuff. Now, the thing which I do not know yet, is it, you know, like I feel like this is like a real data sets, so it's not like really would be generating a fake data sets of these. So, and I don't know if I want to use them. I guess to some degree, I mean, this is countries and cities, so why not? Yeah. So that's the, yeah, so for now, just trying to figure out, you know, like, is there anything I could use which could be beneficial? Okay, so we have a data, we just create a new folder, and here we see data sets. Right, and let's say cities. Shoot. Okay. Let's save cities once again. Save and yes, replace. Oh, interesting. So if I go now into the data, cd generator, cd data, cd datasets, curl my cities. Hey, Marius Lauren. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to build. So what I want to do, I want to run some MySQL optimization, right? Now, to do the MySQL optimization, I need to have an actual data available to me. I don't have any sort of like a services or something running. So what I want to do, I want to mimic the eShop, for example. And in the eShop, you would have like a, like sort of like a user visiting your page. So you have sessions, you have users, you have orders, you have products, you have, like clients. And I kind of want to present how the e-commerce website, which sort of just runs and have everything in there, could be transformed into sort of like ETLing and running the sort of like your analytical pipelines out of that. So this is sort of like I think of this as a pretty long project just to preparing the data sets the way how I want it. It might take some time, but yeah. So for now, I just, as I was mentioning to Pichalingo, I found this Faker library, which I knew nothing about, and it's actually pretty amazing because it's able to generate these, like data sets. And then this also has, this Faker library has ability to include sort of like a community data set, so you can do something like that. So you can create your own Faker, and then you can just register it as a provider, and then basically say like, oh, like fake city, and then it would generate stuff and you would get that. And in this case, even the next level, it actually says like, well, actually you can register at actual data sets like a JSON files, and then you could just, like call them and they basically should work. So yeah, so that's what I'm trying to do. So for now, I just downloaded the cities and countries, these two data sets, and let's see how they will go. So, okay, so I am in here. I think the next what I will want to do, I want to run it as a package because I want to be able to access the files there. So we have a Faker. Okay, so then I guess we will call those Fakers. That's a good name. And then we'll go here, we'll call a Faker called data sets, right? And then we'll just need to basically just copy paste whatever was available in here. So, and we also need, of course, to install the package, which is in here. So let's install the package. Let's get to the requirements here. So it's my Faker dataset. Now, okay, have it here. This is now available. So we just we don't need to add this in here yet. Now the cities is available at data, and then add data sets, and then cities. So now we have this one available. We're not planning to use this one yet. Oh, I actually need to. Fine. Now we go in our test, and now in test we say from, now is it this simple? It shouldn't be. Now you need to import the cities, and then you need to register the cities, and then you can call those. Sounds correct. So right, so from cities providers, it's not cities provider, from alligator fakers data sets, we import cities. Now we can remove or comment these ones. And now we can say, okay, we have a city, name and country in the city. Okay. Right, it says, oh, I see now. It finds the city object and it's just like it. Okay, makes sense. So now if I go minus test, yes, I do have the cities with their country names available to me. So at the same time, I can now say like, okay, so we can add, so it's country, and we can add countries, right? I think that should be correct. Countries, yes, yes. And now if I say, by the way, you also should import countries, and it also should add countries in here. Now here the picker is country, that's great. So if I say iterate over country and just extend the country, and what do you have for the countries? You have a name and ISO 2. So let's go, I want a name and ISO 2 for the country. We can close this one. And let's run again. And now it fails. And I'm curious why. Okay, so it says like it cannot import countries because countries doesn't exist. It's cities, so countries. That's usually is the ChatGPT or actually Copilot's issue. It's suggesting me to do things which is not prepared. Look, and now it's running because it's ISO free. So that's great. Or we can just simply say, you know, print country, right? And to dict, now we don't have to dict, so we don't know how that will be. Just go this way. So now, we also don't have this one. Stupid. Okay, so yeah, it's prints. We have countries with all the information. That's good. Okay, so let's do the to-do list. All right, so where is my file? So to do MD. Okay, so first thing, what we want to do. Or actually, let's go here and rename this to something else. So readme. Okay, so we want to generate eShop data sets. Generate eShop data sets. So what we want to have sessions. We want to have products. We want to have orders. We want to have order items, yes. We want to have order items options, no. We want to have customers, addresses. Now we will be going very simple. We just build the worst thing which we have by knowing, you know, like the least knowledge. So we have the customers, we have the orders, we have sessions. I also would like to have searches, right? So basically like a customer search for something. So that's something would be interesting to search. And actually what we can look into initially, we could look into these things, right? So that's good. So what I want to do next is I want to get data sets for product categories. Is there anything? Personalization and Kaggle. Okay, so what do we have here? So we do have the product title, product ID, vendor ID, cluster label, category label. I think that's not bad. What is in here? Product title, collectibles. And then what's in here is CPU and men's watches, category label. I think I like this one. Right, so we can download this itself. Let me quickly get back to it here. Okay. So let's download it. And we put it in here. Okay, can extend it. Perfect. Let's close it. Let's see how the data looks like. Okay, so for these kind of things, what I want to have, I want to install I think it's right. I haven't worked with that in a while. So okay, just install the Jupyter Lab. Oh, what I'm doing, I don't need that. Stupid me. Actually, can just go into cd archive, right, and just go in DuckDB. Now what I can do, I can say select star from. So I think it was Mania. I think it was this one. Limit 10. Right, perfect. So I want just to see how many of the column 6. So count distinct column 6 as categories we have. I just want to figure out how many categories. Okay, so we only have 12 categories. That's a little bit, it will be fine. Distinct column 6 from this one and no limit. Right, so we do have cooker, oven, home air conditioner. Okay, so what we want to do, we want to actually copy all of this. I want to copy all of this to our categories, right? To our categories.json. Right, so now if I would get back to code and I would expand on the data in the archives, I have categories JSON, and categories JSON looks like that. Can I work with that? Don't think so. I need a different approach. I mean, I can, of course. I just don't really want to be in the position where I'm using, so I just want to build a unique data set, right? So I want to grab from this data set, you know, like for example, I want to grab from this data set a different groups of, you know, like sort of products. I mean, another thing how I can do is basically just follow the idea how this tool was implemented and just go to the OpenAI and say like, generate me a list of, and maybe this is what I should do, right? Generate me a list of product categories for, I don't know, like what we're doing for shop like Best Buy, something like that. Oh, even with the subcategories, I don't want to go to subcategories. I want to be simple. Generate it in a style of CSV. Okay, so this is only final category name, not top categories. I don't care about top categories. Perfect, that's what I wanted. Build it. No, it's fine. Okay, so I think the thing which I do not really know so far, right? So how does this actually work, right? So it's set data set. The set name for names. That's the provider. Okay, so load data set. Just loads the JSON. And that's it. Okay, so what I need to make sure is, okay, got it. So this is not really, I think this is not really a best approach. So, okay, I need a list of products and its categories generated in JSON style, something like product name, price 1212, product category, maybe just go category, it will be category name, right? So that's one. Now product will be Samsung TV, price, let's say $1,000, category TV, right? And then this continues and our array ends. Okay. Perfect. So we can now take this JSON and use that. Oh, we actually can press here. So, and then we can use this as our data set. So this will be our file products JSON, right? And we adding those in here. These are products. And then if we want to perfect. Why did you add Best Buy? I don't need Best Buy here. Oh, because it's a Best Buy gift card. Best Buy t-shirt. Fun. Okay, so I think if we'll need more, we can create more. For now, we just go this way with this way, and we should be done. Okay, so we do have a product, so now we can actually come here and say, where's our project? We can actually say, okay, so we are registering a new data set. We'll call it products. We'll call it product. So now, okay, so if we get our README, we have products. Now, let's go. I mean, we do have a product categories inside it, so that's great, but we will not be extract. I think that's perfect. Now, for the customers, we do have customers because this faker comes with the name, addresses, and things like that. So this is great. Searches we will be generating, sessions will be generating, orders will be generating, and order items, which actually will be the products themselves, we also will be generating. So I think we on a pretty good path, right? So now if I go into my test and say like, okay, so register, didn't I add it? Right, products, and this is a product. And if we get back to the test, and we say, okay, do we have products? It's in here. Perfect. Let's add products as a new one. We have fake product and just call product for me. And then here will be product as well. So now if I would run my perfect, that was pretty simple, I would say. Yeah. So we don't really need these. Right. It's like 3 megabytes. No, we don't need those unless we would want to convert those for some reason. Yeah, it's fine. We can remove this. We can remove this. These are not needed. We do have even more products. Perfect. Thank you, Copilot, for doing a great job generating me more products. Okay. Okay. So now the next thing. Good one. Yeah, Copilot product manager. More like, like a supply and line manager. He's responsible for the supply line. Okay, let's continue then. Let's continue. Okay. So the next thing which I want to do is that I want to, so we have the faker, which will fake data sets. Now, what I want to do additionally, so this part is done. So I was actually thinking of using, I saw this blog post. So basically you can use the Pydantic and the faker together to, to sort of like generate the stuff. And this is as simple as that, right? It's basically just you creating. Well, do I need that at all in this case? I mean, I'm creating this, and then this is a person factory, generate name from class, and then class build and generates everything. And then this is just like an actual, oh, it then returns. Right, they just use these. So, okay, how does the integration to SQL Alchemy? I'm curious how the Pydantic integrates with the SQL Alchemy. So, blah, 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 SQL Alchemy. Yes, I'm familiar with these things. This is how you define where your database is. You're defining you sort of like your session. Right, with SQL model is placed, we can now create Pydamic model that uses the validation. So we create email and name. Create user schema. DB session, and that's the user. Oh. So yeah, it's useless then for my use case, because I thought that maybe I somehow can use the somehow use the Pydantic to actually do the operations into database, but it looks like I can't. There's schema, because I always use the user in here. So no, okay. So that's then not no go. So then we know what we want to do. Want to go SQL Alchemy, right? So now pip install -r requirements. And we should actually change the name for this one. Oops. Name. Right, so now we have this one. Oh, SQL Alchemy. That was a while I was using that as well. So let's go to the beginning. So this is how the usually code should look like. So if this is an SQL Alchemy, let's get back to the code. Let's get back to our test file. And then we can exit. So no code can be executed. And what we do here, we said like, okay, look, you have a data, and then will be SQLite. This is where you can store a database for the time being. And later when we launch MySQL, we can use SQL. It should be called this way. So we need to rename this one to be this one. Right, so this will be the user. Let's create an engine, and then create all. So session. Okay, I really rest in this one. I will not pretend. So DB session is session. Okay, and then okay, so we can go this path. So then DB session is session. So then DB session add. We could add new user, and the email is equal to something, right? And then if we just do DB session commit, that should appear in it, right? So now if I go Python -m test, right? So I should have the things in here. And if I go to my, what's the command? Right, this one. So this is also cool. You can actually say, okay, where I am less, so I need to get back. I need to, can't stay, I need to get back. Right, so I could go DB, and I can say attach the new database, and I want this to be the SQLite and the date. Yes, it was correct. I just do not remember what the name of the test. Okay, test, perfect. Show databases. Okay, now we have test as well. So I do use test, show tables, and we have a users as a table, select star from users, and we have a user which we just created. So now how do we merge these two things together? So I think what I would do is actually very straightforward, is we have our code added in here additionally. We have, you know, like this is the product printing. I don't need any of this. This is, it should be up here. This can be here. Okay, so now we create a user. We could do something like, say, look, we actually have a class method. Is it class method? Now I actually can say that we have a static method, which is create user, right? And what this will return, it actually will return the user. I can, okay, return self. No? Okay, whatever, screw it, fine. Actually, still want to return user. So now what we can do in here, we can say like, okay, so fake name, fake, oh, like this from Copilot. I mean, sure, why not, right? So now I can just say user, create user. And if we run our code, all right, it needs to initiate stuff. And now if I get back here and just say select star from users, I have Angela Lee with the, you know, like email. That's cool. Do you think that's cool or not really cool? Or I'm just excited for no reason. For in range to 10, just run 10 users and we should be good. So now if I run my select statement, we have a bunch of users generated. That's what I wanted. Okay. And you mean write all of this part, right? So I created a class, right, which is sort of like an entity object. And then in the Python, we have these things called static methods. And then whenever I call a function create user, it basically, its job is to create this entity by passing parameters into it, right? Now, I will get to these parameters. So if I would say here, you know, like test, and I would say here test at test.test, right? And then I would say, you know, like run this once. So it will go, you know, like, actually we don't need to add this one. So, and I will comment all the pieces in here for the time being. Right? So now I will say like, okay, now run this, and the output which we'll have is return this object. So if I would run the code now, it returns me this user object. And what I can do if this user object has an email, so let's do it this way. So it's our user is equal user object, right? And also I think I want to, no, it's fine. It's fine. I want just to say like, okay, so the user object, it's already created. So we want to grab name and we want to grab user.email, right? So we want to grab these two things. And now if I just print those in here and just run the code again, I do have a test and whatever, right? So this is my test or something else as a name. And now if I run again the code, it's now print something else, and then again the email, right? So now, because I don't want to just write a bunch of stuff in here, what I want it to do, I want it to be able to generate. So there is this fake library, which has name, first name, right? So maybe we'll get, right, so it has sort of like a name function, which would generate a name, right? Every time you call this function, it should generate a new name. The names can be repeatable, but it should generate a name. And then it also has a function called fake and then email, right? So that will generate an email. What is free email? I don't know what is the free email. Let's check this out. So it basically will generate name. Here you go. So it's the name and then the, oh, free email, I guess it's basically would represent that that's from Gmail. And then if I go with the email, you see like every time I run, it just like generates a new different name, right? Like there is a chance that they will be repeatable, but that's it. So now when we have this user object, we now introduce the SQL Alchemy. So the SQL Alchemist's job is to actually work with the database. So this is the way how we can do. You can say like, hey, work with this database. So in this case, it's just like a file in SQLite database. We're registering, you know, like we make a session. We make sure that all the databases is created. So sort of like this would be a connection string. This will be, you know, like create session. This would be, yeah, create tables. That's what it is. And actually now here we creating a session, or more like, well, we're creating a session here. So I don't know the exact difference between those two, so I will not pretend. So I know that we need to have this one. What's a session? The session most likely is the connection. So session maker should be, okay, so what's the session? Session maker is just creates an object, and right here is, solve with this. Okay, and now here, now in the B session. Okay, so the session is basically is whenever, in this case, SQL Alchemy is connected to the database, right? So basically, like you have your code, you have your Python code here, and it's now to connect to the database, right? Now it can connect, and when it connects, it basically gets, you know, sort of like request back with the session, right? And the session is just basically what keeps it running. Yeah, I don't know how to explain that. It's just like a, yeah, it's just like a session. Yeah, so this is, yeah, so this is session. Now then the session has things like db session add, and basically you just say like add, you know, like a user. So I could just say add user, right? And what this will do is add user to sort of like a memory, and then this will actually commit. So that's actually what push, you know, like the SQL execute the insert objects, and that's basically how it will work, right? So now, because we know, you know, like how this looks like, and we actually can, you know, like run the code, right? So if I would run the code, actually it will just generate the new thing, which is fine, right? So if I would run the code, and then if I would run the select, now I have a new user inserted, right? And so what I'm doing, I'm just saying like, okay, so I don't need to run these things because they are clear. So I can just say user, create user. And it basically repeats exactly the same as we spoken. And if I run the query again, I now have like 14 users. So that's great. So this is basically what it is, right? I'm happy you do. Yeah, I think it's also cool. So we do have, so this is sort of like will be our logic on how we'll be, you know, like presenting the things. So I think how we want to do that is I want to go into the sort of like approach, right? Let's say I think I kind of like starting to figure out what I want to build and how. So we'll have the application. I think what I want to do is do something like run a set of commands like on 2020, like on even the dates. Interesting. So we could say, yeah, on 2024, 04/31st, website got 10 new users, right? And we just sort of like built something like that. There's a function, and then it actually could run, like basically it would run this insert command, which we just created in the test, and we just pass sort of like, okay, the date, and we pass that we want to have like 10 users, and then we just check if the 10 users have appeared, and that will be our function, right? And then we can sort of like add another function, and this is how we grow the data. So additional work would say like, okay, so we got 10 new users, then we got 10 new orders, and then we got 10 new we have users, we have an orders, and we got 10 new sessions or something like that. Yes, and then eventually I could just say like, okay, go over for, like 2024 year, where we have, like each month should have incremental for X percentage. And we can just sort of like, like build a data set of a full year for like full 2025. I mean, who cares, right? We're building the data set. And then we can run a bunch of different analytical, like methods to see, okay, how does data actually look? Like, how do you run the analytics and how do you build the ETLs out of that and that sort of thing. So yeah, so that's sort of the idea, is to build some sort of like scenario where we could say, like, I mean, maybe what we could do is just like, okay, build a scenario where you have a certain, like rules, like we want to run the simulation for a year. We want start with, like couple users, and then, like the user incremental per day increases, like accordingly. And, like as a website, you might get like a 0 orders and, for the one day, and then you would get like 5 orders for another day and stuff like that. So yeah, so that's sort of the idea. I have no idea how to implement that yet, but I think this is something what I will be going towards. Now, the one thing which I'm seeing now and which I need to figure out is right this part. So this part, they reads from predefined set of the products, right? Now, I mean, I can actually use them as well, but the thing which I cannot use users, because users are already created, right? So the customers or users, they are created. So what I want to do, I need to find a way on how to get this data set into this faker, but actually not fake users, because we already have users, right? So I just need to sort of like create a fake user, which is actually a real user, right? I need to call a function which will just randomly select a real user and just add it in there. And I think this is what... How do I want to do that? I mean, I could just... Okay, so the first thing which we need to figure out, we need actually to provide the database in here, so, or the database session. So this will be database session, which should be, like session, which should be from none. Right now the session is coming from here. Okay, so let's create file new DB. So that's our new database. Yes, so I have a user right now. So the citizen is I think I should still learning to stream, so I apologize about that. So yeah, will that idea log the certain user to a certain city for every time the user is used in the data, because the data is more realistic? Yes, so I started with the cities and countries just as sort of, I just wanted to figure out like how these thinkers actually works. But you actually pointed out a very interesting question, right? So it's all will depend here. So we do have a user here, right? So it will be like username. So it will also have city, which is a column string, right? And then it should have a country, which is a column string, right? And that's sort of like the idea. And now every time I use this user, it will always have these. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I didn't want to, I mean, we could, it's a fake data, it's fine. Yeah, emails are random to the names. That's absolutely true. I'm not trying to, yeah, I'm trying to sort of like make sure that it's totally all random, so it doesn't need to be. I mean, how random it is. Yeah, Jackson, Wesley Wars. This looks ugly, right? It still looks ugly, right? I agree with you. It looks ugly. So, free email, email domain, host name. Okay. Fake name. Yeah, that's true. Okay, so okay, it's a fair point. I agree with you. Like using the, you know, like, okay, so to do, right? It's actually to do is find a better way to make fake users. Maybe use name as part of email, plus make sure countries are consistent with things like, yeah, sure, cities are consistent, right? And that sort of it. So this is I'm leaving for the future to do. And let's now concentrate on this database integration pattern into the object. So I need all of these things available to me, right? So I go in here. I have, right, I need to go now in here as well. And we need to have create agent and create engine. Now we have a session maker. So where was the session maker? It was right here. And declarative base, we will not need this one. So we actually need only, so we don't need this one. This is used, well, not really true. We actually could reuse that. Can we? Yes, we can. So we create a class DB, which actually has which actually has this. That's actually a pretty decent implementation. I like that. So it would create an engine, it would create a session, and then it would create this. Now, the thing which I want to, then we have to use the add, a query, and the commit. That's fair. every time we create, we'll be using this one, and then eventually it's a close or delete. It's a close, okay. So additional thing which I want to add in here is this base thing, which we had here. So declarative base. And then, self base is declarative base. And then whenever I will be actually creating something like that, I would say db.base, and that should sort of like point to this part, right? And this should be passed in here. So that's in here. So this is our database. We can actually remove all of these. We don't need those anymore. This is here, and then we just say, okay, db is equal db. Are we doing this way for the other as well? Yes, we're doing this way for the others as well. Now db create engine. We could actually, what did we do with the logs? The logger was getting the environment logger, so we actually can just say OS, so import OS. Environment is, how to call it? This is engine path. I don't know, come on. Perfect, DB connection string. Yes, that's ideal. So this is our DB connection string. We can put it in the virtual and here, and we actually can specify it to be the same as we have it now. So we specify it in here. That's great. So now we have a database ready. Okay, fine. We can have a default value available to us. I just want to make sure that we actually, let's go. Right. Okay, so import logging. Just I want to make sure that we know what we're doing. So info. Creating database connection with the string. Yes, with the, let's go this way, connection string, because we want to reuse this, and now this will be connection string, and this will be also connection string, so we know what it will be using. Perfect. Okay, so the database I think is more or less ready. So we're now going into our manager, and we pass additional DB. Now, where do we get the DB from? We import that from Alligator DB, import DB, right? And we adding it. So now we just need to extend this one by saying, look, you also have additional parameter of DB, right? And this is database from, this is config, this is not session. So we have from Alligator import DB. So DB is actually a DB type, just none. And we could say it's this way. And then eventually self DB is equal DB. And now we have a database object available to us. So now, because we have a database object available to us, and if we say self DB query, I don't know yet how that would work, so we can actually we'll get to this part. Still a little bit early, but we should have a database. If I would run now manage, it should create a database connection, creating logger, starting app. Why did I see, why I didn't saw this part? Okay, it says that it's, so if I go into here, well, then it will be available. Yes, perfect. So DB init creating database connection. That's good. It's just a function. This is an object. Okay, good. Okay, now we're done with these basic things. So now the things which we want to do is we want to implement some sort of, as you wrote here, sort of scenarios, right? So this is a faker which has an app. So what I'm just thinking of the name. So if you have a suggestion for the name, that would be really awesome. So I'm thinking of the name for the package inside the project, and inside this, it would be sort of like a scenarios, right? Scenario, where inside that scenario would have sort of like a different, you know, like a users and then orders and then sessions and then searches done. And then in your app, you would come here and just say, you know, like scenario is equal, you know, scenario xxx. Well, that's a, you know, like xyz. And then you would pass self-config, logs, database, of course. Well, actually, I would just only pass self-app. And then I would pass, you know, like parameters. So for example, params, right? And that would be sort of like a dictionary. And inside this params, you would say, okay, you know, like start date is, you know, like 2024-01-01, right? Then end date of scenario is 2020, you know, like, well, actually that would be like 12/31, right? And then you would be like, okay, users, right? Users. And the users would have its own logic, which say like, okay, users, you know, like start with, you know, like one user, right? And then increase by, I don't know, like 0.1% or something like that, right? So it's sort of like be incremental. Then you also could say, you know, like maximum 1,000 users, right? Why not? Or some additional sort of like a features. And then you could say like, okay, now we also have products. Well, we don't really want to sort of like increase the products, right? Well, actually we could, because the thing which might be interesting is, imagine you're starting a web shop and you only sort of like selling one type of the products, right? You're selling TVs, and then, you know, like you sell 1, 2 or something like that, but now suddenly you got a great deal and now you're adding and selling phones, and now suddenly people are start buying phones and registering on your website, right? So it's possible that, you know, like by adding new products, you know, like the people might most like, you know, like might have increased the visibility of your data sets or something. Sorry, by adding new products that in theory could increase amount of users you have. in theory could increase, a number of orders you do, because it sort of like depends on these sort of things. And that's also could be the thing. So I kind of like want to do something like that, I think. And then, like would run the scenario 1, right? And that scenario would be predefined. Or you could say like, hey, like I actually want to run, like, so this for the scenario 1 would be somewhere in there, and you just basically would not pass anything, but that's internally would have all of those. And then it would have something like scenario custom, and actually you could configure whatever you want to do. Yeah, exactly, like early expansion scenario. Oh, you gave me the package name in here. Yeah, so I need to basically where I could put those all in here, right? I need to sort of like, so it's similar to, okay, so I think we can start with the scenario as an interface. So this would be class scenario. And here, yeah, no worries about that. So scenario, and then from, how did I did this in the other project? Because I know it worked and I just don't want to waste time by trying to remember that again. So this is what I did, and I think I can follow this logic. I had like memory, right? So this was my memory implementation. Well, maybe the memory is the bags example, LLM, client implementation, right? So this was my client implementation. And then I had a client backends, and that was for the different clients. And then you actually could specify, what client you want to build. Okay, so this is what I was looking for. Let's get back in here. Let's have in here. So we don't need this thing. So this is not a client, this is scenario. The scenario is expecting alligator. Yeah, that's the name, alligator app, to be in there. And then we have alligator here, and this would be example scenarios, something like that, right? And then you can go with early expansion, right? So this is early expansion scenario inside our example scenarios, and we have like sort of, or we can just rename it to scenarios, right? And then additional here, I would like to have this custom, right? So this is sort of like a programmable way you could program your scenario as you would want. So we just need to figure out like how to do all of that. Now in here, we say like, okay, there is a bunch of scenarios and there is like a custom. So this is our import scenario. This is how it will be called, right? And basically return scenario by passing the app. Now the thing is that, so we say, look, we have an app and def, we want to do, run scenario, I guess, right? And we pass, but then I can't really implement this one. I don't like it. I don't like it. I think I need to put it in here. So this will be scenario params, right? And actually not even scenario params. That should be something like class scenario params. and then we can define what parameters is actually available in here, and then you would need to pass scenario params as an object. Right, so this is what we basically would be doing, and for now that will be just pass. So you're saying, okay, give me the client, get me the client with the backend, get scenario. Now we want to get name, and then we also could say def get custom scenario, and it will be it will be something like this scenario, and here should be the scenario params, right? And then we can actually pass the scenario params in here, and that should in theory work. And then here, not the backend, but the scenario. So the scenario will be early. What was the name? Early expansion. And what do we want to do with the early expansion? We want to basically grab these things, and then we can say scenario not implemented, right? And then we basically just return, yes, so this can be this one is here. So we just need to make sure that we have this one available for us as well. Right, so this one is in here now. We pass this in here, and right, so now we just need to say, again, let me just make sure that I don't screw up. So when I go to the Discord, I do have ability to get this interface. This is what I wanted to check. And then I just implement everything standard, right? So I want to go from alligator, not scenarios, but scenario, import scenario as scenario interface, right? And then also want to get scenario apps, scenario. Yeah, now class custom scenario, not param. Actually, I might need to do that as well, but it's just scenario interface. Right, and we just have this one in here. So I guess the thing which I want to do here is we need to figure out is the function, right? So the function will be, so the function what everyone needs to implement. So abstract method will be def run scenario, and that's basically just return. So whenever we add a new scenario, right, we also need to implement run scenario function with the scenario params. And I like what it's doing here is basically self scenario params is equal scenario params, right? And now that should be it. And this should be it. And for the custom, we do have not a custom scenario, but we just call it scenario. So now this is working. So now we can just copy paste and put it here with the early extension. Now the difference here is the following, is that whenever we are whenever we are calling early, we actually will not be passing any parameters, right? Like the parameters will be already defined. So we need to find the logic in here where this doesn't exist. So now here we'll just passing none. Now, of course, this part will break. And now what we can say is that if scenario params is not none, then we set it, right? So what will make it is that like whenever we're creating an early expansion, we can say, hey, you know, like the early expansion already has scenario, what's the name of this is already have, so we just need to specify there is an app, which is none, and then there is the scenario params, which is also none, right? So now, whenever we're creating an early expansion, we just need to say scenario interface, scenario params. We'll already have something defined in here, right? So every time we call this scenario, it already has its parameters inside, and then we can actually, we don't need to pass anything into it. So then we can just sort of like, you know, like create a bunch of scenarios in here. And then whenever we need to call a custom, we basically can, you know, like call the custom scenario. Okay, I think that's a start. Right, so now when we are here, what we can say like, hey, look, from alligator scenario, import get scenario or get custom scenario. I don't really like that we should not do this one. This is ugly. So get scenario, and then we just say like, okay, so we do have actually 3 types of the scenarios. If the scenario is custom, we just return a custom scenario implementation. And that's sort of it. Oh, and then I see like, see now I actually are required to add back scenario parameters. And this can be actually can be none, right? So we accepting it to be none available for us, so we don't need to actually specify. I mean, I actually like want to explicitly not to yeah, not really happy with how it is, because I kind of would want to have all the parameters. No, let's get back. I don't know. Okay, so you know what, let's try something. So we're taking this one and then we go in here. Okay, I need some ideas. I need some ideas how to make this code easier to use and read, right? Get scenario optional with the none. Yeah. Then oh, yeah. Okay, fine. I guess 2 against 1 then. I also kind of like wanted to combine these functions, but I wasn't sure if I like how it's all done right. I mean, I think I want to keep if scenario custom. Yeah, I think I still want to keep this one part in here where basically say, look, we actually passing none to you, right? So oh, that's the custom, so I need to get back. So it's not the custom, it should be early extension. So like I'm passing the none in here, and that's sort of fine. So we need to basically also say like, look here, the none is acceptable. And if there's, so, and we should also if not scenario. Oh, if scenario, not if scenario, then we want to pass that in here. Otherwise, we just use this one, what we specify up front. Okay. And then we have a scenario param. So this is just will be the parameters which will be exposed or added into. So yeah, we can look into that later on, how to implement the parent, you know, these things. Okay, so now I go get scenario and I say, okay, so my scenario is get scenario custom passing, you know, so get scenario, the name, the app, and then I also need to pass the parameters, right? And this sort of like would be, let's comment this one, and then eventually we can choose scenario run scenario, and this is params, that's fine. And now if I go to the custom, that is a custom one. And then if I go to the early, that is early one. And we can say early name, early expansion, right? Now custom is a custom, and we say like, okay, we're actually, okay, so this will be like custom scenario, right? Oh, so we need to do name, custom scenario, run scenario. So now if I would run the code, we actually running custom scenario. And now if I say that, hey, you know, like I don't really want to run a custom scenario, I want to actually run early expansion, and then itself. And let's say I did a mistake, right? Let's say I specified the parameters. So what this should do, it should basically be totally ignored. So now when I'm running this, it should be, yeah, it is totally ignored, because for the early expansion, we actually passing nothing in it, right? So this can be come through, but we just not really passing into it. So the only place where this will be used is in the scenario params as a sort of like a custom scenario approach style. Okay. Good. Okay. Let's make a break, because I need a break. I need to get some water to drink. So I'll be right back in a minute or two, maybe 5. If you decide to go to bed or something, just, you know, like if you decide to come back, that's great. If not, don't worry about that. Enjoy your, you know, your evening and night sleep. So I'll try to get back in a bit. Okay, I am back. So, what I'm thinking is the following, is that, okay, what I'm thinking is the following, is just like, we have scenarios. So the thing is that is this one, right? So for example, we want to say, okay, I want to have sessions or visits, right? So this is sort of like how many people have actually visited my site, right? So visit will be, you know, like a number, like would be like, you know, in the beginning it will be like 0 visits, right? So let's say like 0 visits first day or something. And if visits is 0, then everything else should be 0, right? If let's say visits is 1, it's possible that we have, you know, like new user registering. So that means plus 1 user to the database. Now we might have if the registration, you know, did happen, is, you know, like plus, you know, like user performed search, right? So then it will be plus 1 to search, and then it might actually user had bought something. It will be plus 1 to orders, right? So these events kind of like related, right? Now next day we can have, you know, like visits 5, but it's possible that these five visits is done by the same one user who is already registered. Or it's possible that, you know, like visits 5 is actually, you know, like 3 new users. Or it's possible that the visits 5 sorry, actually have 1 old user, 1 new user, and then there is 3 other users who visited, but they didn't do anything else, right? And maybe those haven't done anything else as well. So this is sort of like these things, right? And this will be so interesting when it will work, because it's just like shows, you know, like how the things are interconnected. And it's sort of like interesting is to, you know, like interesting to generate these things. Yeah. Also, there is these things which I would want to integrate, but that's can be done, you know, in the future. Actually, you know what? Okay. I have no idea where to start with that. So let's start with, you know, ChatGPT. Let's see if it has any ideas. I am building a scenario-based database generator. We have metrics like visits and let's say user registered. We would like to run scenario for 1 year, and we would like to simulate how we have incremental visits, and sometimes visits are done by existing users or by new users. sometimes new users register to system, and next time they will be existing users. I need, is there any stats method or library I can use to simulate certain things for this or anything else? I don't know. Let's see, right? Let's see what that will give us. Okay, so no. I mean, we're already using, well, I'm not saying no, but like I do. But this is like libraries to use, but this is not what I'm trying to do. This is split data, understand the patterns and validate the scenario. I think that's there just like for Poisson distribution. Distribution is often used to model the numbers of times. Markov chains, exponentials. This is so way out of my league. Okay, let's try it. I mean, we installed the... Okay, so let's close this one. We don't need this one anymore. That's the alligator. So pip install pandas. I want to see what it was generated. I kind of want to see how that will looks like. Maybe this is something what we should be using. Okay, so while this is installing, how was your week, Pitch Duolingo? Happy to hear. Did you do anything fun this week? Or not yet? I hear you. Usual sometimes is good. Okay, so Jupyter. Do we have pip install? Okay. Right, I need to just, so Jupyter app, let's start that. Okay. So now we're grabbing this. So this is our, let's add actually new folder is just Jupyter because I don't like. So let's close this one, discard here, perfect. So we have our code here. So this should run the generation using these functions. And then another example is this, what I can use actually to represent the data, right? So this is the second one. So this is still running. Let's wait. It's now done. So we do have days, visits, new users, registrations, existing users. This doesn't make any sense. We have 93 users. So it's still not really clear what does the user and registration does, and then like the existing user. So we have 129, existing users then drop to 118. What? Matplotlib. I'm missing Matplotlib. Okay. Pip install Matplotlib. And we also would need to add Jupyter as the ignored. Right, so let's restart our okay, so if I actually go to cd Jupyter, I just run Jupyter. Now it should be here. Okay. Oh, I didn't save anything. Ah, fine. Okay, so our select. It's here. And now we can also okay. All right, so we can just say right, okay. I'm doing it in the reverse order. So this goes here, so then we can just say def visualize data frame. Is that the correct? Plot. Yes, that's the correct. So now we can do this without any issue. And we just call at the end here, visualize data frame. Okay, so total visits, existing users is basically increasing constantly. And this is the number of the registrations, which is always lower. So we have visits, from the visits we have registrations, and then base visits per day. Users, base visits per day. But this is the interesting thing, like the visits per day doesn't really increase, right? I think it should increase to a certain thing and then eventually start capping out. We should not expect things to be growing all the time, but they should be growing initially. I mean, maybe in the eShop, it's not really the situation, but yeah, I have no idea about these things. So if you have some suggestions of how to achieve those, should I like increase this based on the, should I basically say like, look, so we do have a base visit, right? We just say, let's say we go with, you know, like 10, right? So this is 10 users, but then we need to so the existing users is the new user visits. I think it's something different. So that should be good. So I think what I want to do here, I want to say like, okay, so existing users, new users. So existing users. Yeah. Okay, let's do the following, right? So let's say, we don't increase those. So this number, this base visits, basically should so this is base total visits, right? They are just basically jumping up and down. This is perfect. I like that approach. That's really, really good. What I want to do, I want to have an incremental based on the existing users, right? So if the existing users was increased, so I want to multiply that by existing users. Now, existing users in the beginning is 0, right? So this will end up being in 0, right? So this will be a straight line. It's just like 0. Perfect. Now, what I want to have here is that if per random okay, let's go with 1. Let's go with 1, and this is visits per day. So now user visits, right? So this is user probability. So basically what I want to have, and I don't know how to do it, what I want to have like, okay, so we do have base visits per day, but I want to increase this number based on how many existing users we have, right? But I don't want to make it linear. So I want to say that that new user, so this should be just maybe something like that, where this random value from previous visits, which we set to and then user probability is just, let's call it tape, let's call it so yeah, I don't know how to do that. I know what I want to do, but I don't know like even how to specify those in here. So if we go with this, right? So visits is at 0. Because base visits per day because the visits is not increasing. I would like to multiply this by repeating user visits, right? So this is like the base visits per day, and this is right. Yeah, so this is what I want to do. So let's say random visits, and then call it this way. So we do have the base visits, perfect. Now want to add the base visits, we want to add the between the number of the visits we already, well, not number of the visits, but we actually want to have existing users, and okay, and then user visiting probability, which let's say is 10%, right? So 10%. So user visiting is 10%, while existing user visiting, right? So the existing user visiting, existing users, it's 10%, right? So now each visit should introduce existing user, and this would be, you know, like new user. Let's just call it, it's a new user. So now new user, it's basically will be existing user, so it would be plus existing user, right? So now the existing user is the existing user. So now if I run this, so the existing users is actually increasing. But what I was hoping is that I was hoping to have this some sort of like number. So what will be if I just run this value in here? Let's say just run it for 10 days. So the existing users, oh, this is existing user visits. No. So that should be existing users. It's the existing users, existing users, existing users. Yes. And now this one still is not effective. Do you know why? Like now the existing users is actually increasing, but like why this value is so, well, it's not really low, but it's not really also high. Well, okay. Doesn't matter. 365. Let's remove this. I don't see the user increase in. There is no food. Okay, so visit new users, right? So user probability and user existing users. Existing users. Okay, so now it's more reasonable. Right, so I kind of, so existing users is just like increasing, registrations is unclear, and then total visits is also increasing as expected, right? Because we have more users and they are all increasing. So yeah. And then I guess we would need to introduce some portion, you know, like the base and things like that. Okay, so let's get back into code. Oh no, Let's save this part here first. Okay, so let's start with the so scenarios, and then I guess we could use with patterns, right? And then we can go visits, right? And let's say class visits. And then it will have some sort of like parameters which is will need to share or generate visits. Maybe that's a better name. Def run. I think we'll want to have an app in here in the future for accessing the database to getting the numbers of the certain date and things like that. Or we'll just try to keep everything in the memory to some degree. But let's for now just go pretty simple, right? So we do have like I mean, we just need to start somewhere. Let's just try to write code, see what we're getting, see if that makes sense to some degree, and we just proceed, right? So I think for now is that we can say like, okay, we have def static visits, right? Or what do you mean by that stuff? You mean this one? Sure. You know what I will do? I will just do the following. Look, so I will remove this from git ignore, right? So now this will be a part of, so git add Jupyter, right? So I will commit by the end of the day, git commit some stuff, then git push. Yep. So this is committed, and I should have renamed this one to be, so it's just will be, oops, let me switch to different keyboard. So this is where the source code is. So feel free to, like pull it out and look into that. You will be able to see the Jupyter notebook in here available to you. Yeah, no worries, of course. So I just need to add the additional requirements. So I need to add pandas and Jupyter app. and also matplotlib. Did they spell it correctly? Yeah, this one. Right, so yeah, basically you see what I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to basically figure out, and that's the idea, right? So I do have now, I'm thinking like we'll have this patterns and we'll just say like, okay, this is like a random visit, right? And then it might have sort of like, you know, like min max, right? And what that will return is just like will return, you know, like from numpy import random, right? So this basically random seed1, random, and then whatever the function is, right? It just returned from minimum to maximum, right? So would that actually work? We usually do this way. We go np. No. Okay. We have a seed, and then would be np random integers. And it basically would be, yeah, I think we can go with the first scenario to be everything random, right? Just to make things so it's an Erlang expansion, just so like static, right? And we just say like, okay, so we go with the static here, and we just want to go with the static first. Static, and now we basically we'll be adding some parameter. Well, this is a static, but yeah, this is a static one, so the scenario. And then what this would use, they would say like, okay, I want to have a visits, which is, you know, like a static visit, and visit is sort of like, okay, so def get visit. I would need to figure out like a better way around that, but this could just be return 5, right? But this is, yeah, so I don't like that because I want to control sort of my random visits. Well, not random, but sort of like static stuff. I'm just thinking if I want to. Okay, let's go here. So run scenario def get visits, right? And that should return self scenario params, and now scenario params is visit. So now it means that my scenario parameters, I need to somehow expose them. I guess I could say class scenario params extends scenario params as interface. Do I actually need to have an interface of this? I don't think we do. I think we don't really need to have this one as well here. Because this is just like a placeholder, and we would say like, okay, visits is none, right? Scenario params inter. We might need to use that for something else. So now we have scenario params visits, and now here we can say like, hey, you know, like scenario params is the type of the scenario params which you know of. It's none. You see what my problem here? I'm trying to use the static as the custom, but then sort of like to make it simple custom, right? Where I would say like, I still want from here to be able to say, you know, like run the static, and then you still can configure the static, whatever that is. And maybe that's what we will need to do all the time. Maybe we'll define the parameters we want for, you know, like for the early expansion. So it's sort of like it follows a certain scenario, but you still want to configure, you know, like how extreme that could go, you know, like sort of what is the maximum limits and things like that, right? So we can, of course, like sort of like create, you know, like, so this is, you know, like scenario params, and I could get like, okay, like my scenario params, or like basic scenario params, which would extend scenario params, but not the interface, right? And now params. And then here you would actually have, look, the visits is actually 5. So this is still is scenario params. And what I can do is we'll get the visits in here. So what I can do now is in this situation, I could say, look, you actually can pass the scenario params, and those can be passed here as scenario params. So now in my application, I could say, okay, so what I want to do is to go static. And what I also want to do, right, I want to go static, and then I actually want from alligator static, you know, like static import scenario params. Import these ones, or import scenario params. And I could say my params is actually, I cannot really specify these in any form unless I would just say, okay, I do have class my scenario params with visits equal 10. So if I would extend those in here, which I don't really like, but it's just like a possibility, then I could say that pass this and also pass my scenario params. So now if we go into the static, let's say here was 5, and we run this, and we just say this is scenario params, and then just self app log info, and we want just to say, okay, this is our visits. So if I run I do have visits 10, right? So this is visits 10 because it uses this visit which was defined right here. if I say, okay, don't use any visits and basically actually don't pass anything, what it should do, it fails because it doesn't know which one to use. So what we need to say, look, if if I say here that it's a basic scenario params, like this, and I run code, I get 5. But if I enable this one back, my scenario params, and I would run it again, oh, okay, it's actually overwrites. Does that make sense? I think for the time being, we can just ignore this part completely, right? And we're just generating the scenario based on this. But at the same time, I can just have it like this. I don't need to have this one in here at all. It's just my scenario params. And if someone will extend those, it would have the parameter. The thing which I don't like about this approach is that I'm actually creating an object when I'm creating this object, right? Like this creation. So this should sort of like be passed internally to be used. Now, the reason why I cannot pass that is because I actually defined that these scenario parameters needs to be passed through the constructor. And because they need to pass through the constructor, it's sort of like this should ideally be none all the time, and only this should work, unless I would need to, I mean, the answer is very clear here. It's actually should do the following. So I should keep this as I had, but just include this one. And I should say like, okay, you know, like having all of these parameters, I'm expecting the scenario parameters to be added in here. And what will happen if the scenario parameters, if not, so if we are not passing the scenario parameters, then actually I want you to use the scenario parameters which we had defined in here. Else, you actually are allowed to use, you know, like scenario parameters, which is scenario parameters from here, right? So you can actually use that. And I think that's should be it. So now, if I run this, I should get 5. And if I decide that I actually want to, you know, like have my own, so basically I want to say like, okay, like from alligator scenarios, sorry, alligator scenario static, scenario params, and I say I actually want to have a scenario params. Just go params equal this, and we just want to say that params visits, it's actually equal now to 11, right? So if I go now params here, and I would run this, I'm getting the 11. Okay, I think I like this one more because this allows me to extend, like basically say like, okay, I can use this scenario, but I just need to extend a couple parameters or change something, some metrics, and I just want to see how they are running. But then I kind of have like a bigger control of what these things are doing. And then additional to all of that, if I go here, is there a way for me to okay, and right, but how do I right? So if I have something like that and I go inside the app, oh, look, that's nice. So I'm actually able to see the documentation about the parameter, so that might be very convenient. So actually I can explain what all of these things are doing and how they are interconnected. Okay, great. Okay. Now the thing which I also thinking is that instead of us, yeah, no worry about that. Thank you for coming over. Really appreciate that. Enjoy your night and good night, man. And if you want to finish, I will be getting to sleep myself in like half an hour. So you feel free to finish watching that, you know, like in the Twitch or YouTube, I guess. If you're still here, I have a last question before you go. I'm kind of thinking of maybe switching from Twitch to YouTube live. Would that make sense? Would it make difference for you where to visit or not really? Because like kind of like not really sure where this type of content would be better perceived. Okay, so it's fine for you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Good night, man. Okay, so another thing which I wanted to do is that it's not the number of the visits. I think what I want to simulate is I want to simulate an events which is happening, right? So I do have sort of, in this scenario, I do have visits, right? There's sort of like, well, let's get technical. So in here, I do have get visits. What I should do, I should be something like get visit event, right? Now the thing is that events, not event, right? So this is multiple events. Now, a visit can trigger a chain of events. So it basically can propagate up, right? So we have a visit, then the visit can trigger a search or can trigger something else. And then, you know, like the user can order and then, you know, the things can happen. Again, I'm kind of like overcomplicating and making things so much more complicated for myself to implement, where I think I just should just go very yeah, I should just go much simpler than that. Okay, what? Also, what I'm thinking is that the scenario, yeah, so I think, okay, I think I'm getting there. So what the scenario should be, the scenario itself should be a data model set. So do have a scenario, so I think that should be static, right? And inside it, I will have a scenario, right? So now inside this will be this code. And that can be called, and this is a scenario right now. Additional to this, we might add a custom, and this is kind of like what is making this application run, right? So now this actually can have models, right? And for example, a model here will be visits. Now if we go to my test and I look into this, right, I could say, okay, we do have, right, so I do have this one. So from declarative base. So this is an object, and this is my, so this is a model called visit. It's in their visits table. It has a column. It might have created add. It's not string column. Okay, so how to add created add column for SQL OWL ME. Daytime. Okay. So if I go back to code now, this will be, we just need to add datetime and function. Can comment this part. This doesn't have anything, so now what I need to do, I mean to say, okay, so scenario, and then def init scenario. And what the init will do first, it needs to, okay, so first initialize database, right? Because we sort of like will have a different patterns for these databases. Then second will be, yes, initialize database plus tables, right? So that's what we want to do. How do we do that? We had it in here, which is basically create an engine, make and this create all, right? So this is the part. So so what we need to do, we need to take all models. So we need to, okay, from alligator scenarios, static models, import, not user, it's not user, it's models, visits, import visit. It's not visit, it's visit. import visit. So our is visit. Again, I forgot to copy paste it. So in its scenario, I mean, we can just say in a db, right? And then we just say, okay, so self db base, no, not self db, it's actually self app db base, then metadata create all, and then self db agent. Right, but this will not work because the visits needs to be aware of this. Does it mean that I need to? Okay, this is a problem. Self will it just work? It shouldn't, right? I mean, I could just try. Because how? Okay, maybe just in a db. So now when I run this, okay. Right, so I just go scenario, and that should be it. Get visits doesn't exist, but it actually failed a little bit later. So if I go show tables, yeah, it doesn't have visits. Okay, let's try to fix this bug. That's not a bug, just my fat fingers. Okay, and CSL visits, right? Just get visits. Right, so we have this one in here and this one now. Okay, this one of course succeeded, but now let's say if we don't have a table, so the table wasn't created. Table wasn't created because this has nothing to do with this model. So what I want to do, I want to say, hey, you know what? You need to create models. Shit. Yeah, I stuck. So class. Okay, I don't know. So let's in one class I have, and in another package I have visit. For whatever reason, table visits is not created. How to fix it and what could be the problem? Ensure the correct base uses shelf f bave. Right. I see. Okay, so what I can do actually, I can say, hey, because this is separate, so from alligator db import db, right? So this is what I want to have, and now here db is actually having base, right? So this is sort of this thing. Now it shouldn't, yes, it shouldn't actually cause an issue. Yes, perfect. Here you go, easy. Yeah, doesn't matter. Yes, this is what I wanted. That's perfect. So we do have DB base, so now we have full control of the things. So I know that, so can just call it create it, right? And it will return visit. And then we'll just say, hey, you know, like just go with the visit. And what I want to, if here, like add like user agent is column, right? And then I want to do here user agent is equal to, and don't give me this suggestion. What I want to go to faker, import faker, and I want to say, hey, right, also, yeah, I think we need to have a faker in here as well, right? So we just need to have here, like we do have db, we just go faker, right? And then we had in here stuff, just go faker and then add all of these things, right? And then we say faker, and then we say def create faker, right? And then we just specify all of those, and then we just return fake, and then faker is equal create faker, right? So this is our faker. And we can actually take from the alligator faker, import faker, and right here faker user agent, right? And now if I say static, we have a visit, so there should be something like, you know, like right, because let's get back. So because we cannot use this one in here, this needs to have created add, and it shouldn't be function now. a type of datetime. Okay, we can do that. So we should say dt, right? So this is our dt, which is dt, which is a type of datetime, right? So we're expecting to get a time here. So for the visit, because the visit relies on the date, and we just don't want to have like an empty visit, which is unreasonable. We want to have something logical to it. We want just to do that. So right, so now in our, let's also delete this because it's not needed anymore. So we have it in here. So now in our scenario, this one, I think I would want to change it to the static as well. That would make a little bit more sense. So refactor rename static. So in our scenarios, static, well, actually static scenario sounds much better. It's just like here is not visible, but let's say I'm working on one scenario at a time, so just having I think path I like a little bit more, because otherwise that will be a little bit messed up. Okay, anyway. Okay, so we run the initDB. Then the next thing is that okay, write me a iterate over start and end strings to create visits, right? So for no, not this one, visit start, visit end. No, iterate over days to create visits for each day, right? So for days and range from 1 to whatever days is, and then where we provide start date, right? So for I should just write that and be done with it. Okay, so write iterator for days. Perfect. Can grab this one. I think patterns. I don't know what to put those. Let's put it just here. It's fine, just put it here. We'll figure out where to put it in the future. So we have a date iterator, we have start and dates, we transform those, we iterate through each of them, get the next one, that's the usability, perfect, and we go over those. So create scenario, so these two will come from the parameters, you know, like start date, end date. I think we will figure out also just like start date and where to end. So we have 10 days and we're now iterating over those. So let's go log.info day, right? And just reiterate. And then we have, you know, like all the days available to us. That's great. Let's only specify that to be, you know, like, and now what I would want to have is what type it is. current. Okay. So this is date. So now what we can do, we actually can call for in range self visits, right? So we calling how many visits we'll do. We say like, okay, visit date, which is day, and visits, how many visits it had. So it has like one visit, right? And now, yeah, and then we just add, right? And then that we can remove this one. Ouch. So we can remove this one. We can say scenario is running, right, with some parameters in the future. This is this one, this is this one. And then we want to just, I think we would want to commit for each day, right? So self appdb commit. Maybe for, it will depend from the situation, right? So if I would run now again, it fails because it's expecting to get, so not this one. So what we want to do, we want to say visit created, and we just want to say create, you know, like where the date is. And yeah, don't be smart ass in this case, right? And it will create, that's a visit, and that should be it. Nope. Why is not that? Has no column user agent. Okay, so it's not only init. Okay, how to run DB migration for SQL Alchemy. So I think instead of installing this, this is how I will run. This is how I'll run the migration. Continue. Perfect. So now, if I run the code, perfect. And now if I go here and show tables, have visit, select star from visits. Perfect. We have 5 visits for each day, right? I think additional to do, I mean, this is fine, right? I think we kind of like getting there. Perfect. So let's commit, git commit my changes, plus we have static visits running. Perfect. So to summarize what today, what we did is that we started the alligator project. We initially called the, yeah, I think I want to also rename. Yeah, we can rename that tomorrow. It's kind of will take a while for me to prepare, so I'll prepare that tomorrow, or not tomorrow, sorry, for the next stream, maybe for next Saturday. So basically, yeah, what we have is we have a visits now we're generating. So now we need to go to the next thing where we want to, for the visits, we want to add. So what we want to do next is that for each day, one to do add user created, right? Also to do add order created. Now for the order to be created, for this to work, we need to have orders in place, right? So not orders, sorry, we need to have products in place, right? So we need to have products. Now, when we have users, which now can add orders, I think it should be okay, right? And then yeah, and then that's it. Git commit, adding some to-dos, and git push. So your name and email address automatically based on those. It's fine. Okay. Yeah. So thank you everyone for being tonight with me. Especially thank you Pichta Flinko for joining. If you enjoyed the stream, join on the next one.